Cardiff City Football Club are in big danger of going down to League One. And not just going down, but staying in League One or roundabouts for quite a few seasons. And I'm going to explain why in this video. There's many problems that make me unfortunately confident that we're not going to survive. Now, this is just my own opinion, and people can have their own disagreements or agreeing with me as well. But I think there's a lot of issues that I can bring up here right now that are very telling and are very obvious that need to be fixed. And there's also been problems that are the same for almost probably a decade, or even since Vincent Tan has been in charge. Now, at the time of recording this, we're actually 21st, not 20th. But this took me about a day and a half to make. So we're slowly falling down the table. And sadly, I'm right. I don't want to be right in this video, but this is what it's going to be. Basically, some cold, harsh truths. And if people don't want to hear them, then you don't have to watch this. But this is just how it is from a Cardiff fan's perspective anyway. This is what Cardiff City used to look like. These used to be the colours for Cardiff City. The classic blue and the white, the blue shirt, the white shorts, and then you'd usually have some kind of like third territory colour, like a yellow or a black. And that was kind of what the foundational, the fundamental colours of the Cardiff City, symbolism, I guess you should say. This is what it used to be like. This is what it looks like now. And you can see a clear and obvious difference. Whilst the blue and the white have not changed that much, you can see that it just looks a lot grayer. I mean, like our third colour now representing the club is grey. We have blue, then we have white, then it's grey, and then this is this awful red as well. It's not even like proper red. It's the Malaysian dragon kind of red, right, which we all know we don't want. And you can see here is when they made that extension and made that red, it was probably the most backwards thing they could have possibly done for the club ever. And there's still most fans haven't forgiven the ownership for doing what they've done when we were in that Premier League season a while ago. And yes, they have realised their mistake and they reverted back to the blue, but you can still see here the red is still on the badge. And I think most people would agree that the first thing they would do if they were to take over Cardiff City, if they even had the money for it, would be to just make it blue, right? And you could just see, I know that the before picture, this is probably just after the season's finished when the pitch is getting redone. It's all lovely and everything. And you can see how green it looks on the grass. I mean, they probably had a massive cleanup as well. They're taking pictures from, I don't know, a helicopter view, I guess. And then you look in this is probably just after a match, or it looks like just before a match, actually. People are just sitting down. But you can just see there's just so much less life in the place compared to this one here. And honestly, I think it looks so much better, even if it was like blue seats. I think it just looks much better before because it's cleaner, even though it's not as many people could fit in. You had the attendances turning up regularly. But now it just brings me to think, like, what are we actually doing here, right? What's going on? And this is a quote I made up. Don't worry, they didn't actually quote this. But you can see the club is on the downfall, and people have been able to predict this for a few years now. We've just been so lucky with previous seasons. The season we stayed up a couple of seasons ago, where we stayed up because of a point deduction, because Reading had a point deduction. By a mere miracle, we stayed up, right? And even then, we were still fighting for every single point. And I find that it's only when we're in so much immense pressure that we actually tend to produce results. So maybe a sense of urgency is what the club really needs. So here's what I like to call the Cardiff City cycle. Or in other words, the hokey cokey, right? You all hear the hokey cokey, right? You put your manager in, your manager out, new one in, new one out, shake it all about. And that's kind of what's happening in Cardiff City over the past 5-6 years, basically since we come back down from the Premier League. Neil Warnock left about halfway through the season when he said he was going to get us one more season to hopefully get us back into the Premier League. That didn't happen, so in came Neil Harris. Neil Harris steadied the ship and got us to a promotion race. I think we finished 6th or 5th around that in that season, which is really good. But then the following season, we were mid-table, or that we were towards the bottom of the table actually, and Harris got sacked for, I think it was like 8 straight defeats, and then in comes McCarthy, right? And he gets us to 8th. We just narrowly missed out on the playoffs. So we thought, okay, this is the man for the job. What happens? Halfway through the next season, he gets sacked for basically almost getting us relegated. And then in comes Steve Morrison, who gets us to 18th, as safe as you can be, right? And I really thought as well, this is my opinion, right? Under Steve Morrison, we were really building something. When he started that new season, we had, I mean, the squad was barely recognizable. We had barely, anyone that was left over. I think Perry and G and Ryan Wintle, I think, was probably the only two players actually recognised in the squad, and Joe Rawls. But I genuinely thought we were building something by going for a more younger, attacking style of football. And whilst we weren't getting results every time, the football that we're watching was way better. It was played on the floor, whereas we used to hoofball with Warnock and Neil Harrison, especially Mick McCarthy, and playing 5 centre-backs in a game. But it was just different. And unfortunately, his attitude kind of lost him the job before the results did. But this is just have a look at some of our Cardiff City's football expertise and experts at the club. We're running quite thin on them. Basically, as the smart businessmen as they are, they think it's better that because they're rich and they know how to make money, that they also know how to run a football club. Now, from the financial point, sure. But from any other points, no. It's just proven wrong time and time again. And apparently it's reported that every month Tan is pumping in about £2 to £3 million. And you might think, oh, well, he's really dedicated to, keeping the club up above water. The problem is he's pumping in £2 to £3 million a month, and we don't know what that's going towards. And he probably doesn't either. I mean, I've been told that it's to do with wages, but how can you be pumping that money into the club every single month and you know what, this is going well? The latest 4 managers we've had, let's just have a look. So we had Steve Morrison, Mark Hudson, Errol Bullitt, and then Omar Rizza. 3 out of the 4 latest managers, this is what's crazy to me, 3 out of the 4 latest managers have all less than 1 year as a first-team manager combined. Steve Morrison was a youth coach. Mark Hudson was a youth coach. Omar Rizza was an assistant coach for Watford. That's the only experience he had in the Championship. Errol Bullitt was the only manager to have had at least 1 year experience. Okay, so that should tell you the kind of like what is going on in the club. We're appointing managers who aren't actually managers. We're promoting them to be managers with very little to no experience at all. And that's just really crazy to me. And I understand this in Omar Rizza's case, and we'll get onto him in a bit, how passionate he was for the job and how the players wanted to play for him. But the thing is that you've got to take the emotion out of football sometimes, and when you're running a club at least. And again, who am I to say who knows how to run a club? But in terms of the logical factors of running a football club, it doesn't matter how much someone wants a job. I really want the job. Christ, if you give the job to me and paid me even like minimum wage for football or whatever, I would still take the job, right? But there's got to be a system in place. And also, none of the managers, 0 out of the 4, have any previous championship experience as first-team coach or manager. So again, Omar Rizza, I think he was assistant manager for Watford. Not sure how long and how long ago, but that was his own experience. So he's somewhat had that kind of experience, but not as a first-team coach. You think, oh, you work your way up from League 2, League 1, or somewhere around that. Even non-league, some of the managers start up. And it brings me to this question. What's the plan, Vincent Tan? I got all these sayings today and all these songs that I've prepared, but it's something I ask myself quite a lot. For some of the missed opportunities we've had as a club, unfortunately, I couldn't fit them all on one screen, but here's just 4. Brian Barry Murphy as assistant coach. Brian Barry Murphy, I believe, was one of the youth coaches for Man City. Now, I know you're thinking, like, how the hell would we ever get a Man City coach at Cardiff? Well, he's basically a free agent at the moment. At least this is what I've been told. This is what I've heard and seen. So Brian Barry Murphy was a free agent as a assistant coach or as any kind of role, right? And we missed that opportunity. We could have got him in instead of, let's say, Omar Rizza or, once Errol Bullitt was in charge. But we didn't. We went with Omar Rizza. Fair enough. That's fine. But then we also missed out on Steven Schumacher as first-team manager. And it was reported, he had 2 separate interviews and both he really impressed in. Now, I don't understand what happened to the point where he had 2 interviews that he really impressed in, but yet it still wasn't good enough to get the job. Now, at the time, Omar Rizza was, I think he had just won 5-0 against Plymouth. So you can understand they don't sack the manager while things are going well. However, it comes to the emotion of it. It's like, yes, okay, we've got the new manager bounce, but everyone knew we were going to have a new manager bounce, or, it was more or less guaranteed. But the run didn't last as long as we wanted to or as good as we wanted to. even though we're unbeaten, we still hadn't won that many games. And just to go back on the Barry Murphy point as well, it looks like now that he's been targeted by QPR, and you think that QPR aren't really much bigger of a club than we are, right? We're the capital city of Wales, right? And what an opportunity it would be excuse me, for him to come to Cardiff City, even if he was a more backroom staff kind of role, even if he was even director of football or a youth director of football, anything like that, it's just a major opportunity miss. And we could have even had it as first team manager as well, whilst that would be risky. But at least you're getting the best of the best right there. And again, free agent, missed opportunity. And then we come on to Rocco Simic, who was signed by the board, not by Errol Bullitt. Errol Bullitt said that he didn't want Rocco Simic, or he wasn't interested in it, and that it wasn't his purchase. But the missed opportunities was, as soon as we signed Simic, we sent him straight out of the Kortrijk. I just thought, like, why? We did the same with Ryotaro Sonoda. We shipped him straight out to Kortrijk, and I thought that was a good move. But for signing a striker worth £3 million, I think we paid up to £3 million worth, right? Why did we ship him straight off? This was someone who Sunderland, right? Sunderland were targeting this man as the first team striker. This is a guy who has played previous Champions League football. He has that experience. I think he's 23 years old. Or no, I think maybe even younger than that. Could be. I'm not even sure, right? But he's a young striker. He's got a proven record at a big club. Yes, Austria is the less, but he's basically at the biggest club in Austria, RB Leipzig, and RB Salzburg or whatever. But I just saw that as a massive missed opportunity. And the final thing as well, we finished last season as well playing players like Dylan Lawler, Raheem Conte, and Louis Giles. Again, flashbacks of Ryan Giles. But we played them towards the end of last season, and we even won 2-1 against Southampton. And these players were featured in home games, but we weren't playing these youth players now. At the start of the season, all of those disappeared again. Errol Bullitt chucked pretty much every single youngster out on loan, and some of them didn't even play. And one of them, Fagan Walcott, he actually became a permanent move for York City, which I just find baffles me because it seems like he had some quality. But let's get on to Omar Riza. So, first of all, the pluses, right? What do I like about Omar Riza? And again, this is all opinion-based. So Omar Riza, I think he's genuine, he's honest, he's a really nice guy. The second part is that he is very tactically flexible. He can assess the opposition, he can see what they're going to do, and he will plan to try and counter what they do. I'm going to see how that actually has a negative effect on it, though. And the third thing is that he's on the fans and players' side, right? You know, when he was appointed, the fans were really happy about it. The players are really urging the board to, they're really hinting at it quite obviously to get him on board. And it was I was a bit skeptical about it at the time, thinking like, why they want him so much? But I went along with it. But here's some of the reasons why I'm not a massive fan of Omar Riza, and that he has very questionable lineups and subs at times. Some of the substitutions I see that he makes make no sense. A lot of times he plays to avoid defeat, like the Bristol game, and I'm sure a couple other games as well. We were 1-0 up. And what happened? We literally went to a back five. We brought on another centre-back. I think we took off a midfielder or a forward, and we tried to defend out a 1-0 lead. And what happened? They scored late on, I think just after a set piece, Bristol City now. And I just think that why are we playing to sort of like keep a 1-0 lead or a 1 point gap? Why can't we be like other teams that want to dismantle and destroy and just shred like other teams? I know it sounds really sort of vulgar and weird, but like when I look to, if I was a manager, I would look up to keep scoring until the other team has completely given up. And if you say, oh, well, that tires people out. Like, well, yeah, but you have the big squad to rotate, and youth players don't actually count as part of your 28-man squad or however many it is. Okay, so we lack that kind of desire, that hunger, want to create chances, that want to, be better than what our current standards are set at. We're just looking to just get by. And the second is the hesitance to play the youth. I just generally don't understand what the mentality is with youth players. They're constantly not ready. They're not, it's a bit too early for them yet. The idea is that until you introduce young players into your squad, you never know how they're going to sink or swim. And again, I use Sunderland a lot in this video, but Sunderland's average age of the squad is 23.6 and ours is 26.4. Now that should say a lot, right? That's the average age of the squad. And it just gets you thinking of like, what are we doing? I mean, all these young sides getting to the top end of the championship table. Even in the Premier League, there's so many more youngsters. The game's changed now. We're no longer looking for really experienced heads, right? I'm sure you introduce some kind of balance, but the foundation of the squad now is built on young, athletic, and energetic, hungry footballers that want to win things, because the young players will always want to give 110% when they play because they're fighting for position. People, especially in the Cardiff squad, you have Joe Rawls, who's probably coming towards the end of his playing career and becoming more into a manager now, right? Or a coach. You have Aaron Ramsey, El Ghazi, even Callum Robinson is 30 or 31 now, right? So he's still, a really useful asset to the team. But these are players in the latter years of their career, which you would think naturally they wouldn't care as much if we were to get promoted or relegated, because they've more or less had their careers, right? It's supposed to be for the newer generations. And the third thing that really, boggles my mind is the unclear preferred play style. I see sometimes we're pressing, oh, it looks amazing, right? We're really playing fast paced now. And at other times throughout the same game, we'll sit back and we'll not do anything. Okay, we'll just sit back and we'll do a 5-4-1 whatever out of possession. And other times we'll play really direct. Or now we're playing hoofball. Now we're playing really short passes. Now we're doing wing play. And it's really confusing to understand what he's actually trying to achieve the squad. Now I think a lot of it is down to the players not executing what he's instructing the players to do. But I mean, what else can you do, right? Maybe you can partly blame the players, but he's picking the same lineups time and time again, and they're not really doing what he's asking. So that's what I don't really understand. So obviously, I've got to have a turn at manager as well. And this is what I would do if I was Cardiff City, right? I would just go to a 4-3-3. It seems to be like one of the more popular formations. Right now, we do a 4-2-3-1, which is not bad, but let's be honest, 4-3-3 is kind of the standard thing, right? I would implement a high press, so you don't give teams time on the ball at all. You play fast pace. There's a fast build-up and direct play. So as soon as you nab the ball off them, you're playing really direct on the floor. You're just passing the ball forwards. Every pass should be looking to go forwards, right? But when we're constantly passing back, we're passing around the back, and we're passing sideways, we're just inviting pressure and we're inviting more mistakes. Because when you pass sideways, it's probably the most predictable pass to make from one centre back to the other. Okay, if you've got at least one decent striker who's got a bit of pace about him, he can force a mistake. He can force you into an error because all he has to do is run at you. So fast build up where we always look to go forwards. And the third thing is bringing down the age of the squad. Like I said, the average is currently 26.4. I want to bring that down to an average of 24, which is still higher than Sunderland. Again, common theme, but I'm using them as an example because they were a team that really surprised a lot of people this season because of how young the squad, they got a new manager and everything. And I just feel like it's so like idiotic how we're not following that path. So probably my most favorite part to talk about in anything football related is the youth, right? And for Cardiff, it's youthophobia, because for whatever reason, we just absolutely hate giving youngsters a chance, okay? I genuinely don't know what it is, whether we think that they're not good enough for the squad. And I got to be honest, I think the recent years we've seen, the youth prospects have been the best we've ever seen them, right? And I'm sure there's a couple of youth prospects. Like there's a guy, I think he was age 15 or 16, which hadn't really even been in the academy for long. He got bought by Man City for about 500k, again, reportedly. And it makes me wonder as well, like how we never even cheered at the kid, and now he's gone to Man City to train with them instead. So we clearly have talent in a squad, and I've just put a couple of pictures of players that I think have really got some talent and some big names that have been mentioned a lot. We got Tana. I don't know. I'm going to say Tan Nyakua, right? Because I don't want to mispronounce his names. But he was reportedly targeted by a Belgian side and for an outright fee, not even for a loan. Okay. But they wanted about 500k for him. I think reportedly I don't want to outlandishly say that. But it shows that a guy there who's not even featured in any first team football for us, as far as I'm aware, he's already been targeted for about 500k reportedly. Ronan Campacchio, unfortunately, he suffered an injury, but he's one of the most promising youth Welsh prospects that we've pretty much got. And, he's a defender, he's attacking, he's very skillful, agile. Dylan Lawler, captain of the under-21s. And again, like why we haven't even introduced him much in the first team squad. We've got Louis Giles, who, again, what does he have to do to start? He started in the Stoke game. He played in the Cup, which he won. He was brought off at half time. Maybe it wasn't the right game to bring him in. Maybe a home game would have been better. But nevertheless, it's nice to see that we're chucking them in the deep end to see if they go into sink or swim. Because what's the worst that can happen, right? We got Dakarai Mafiko, who featured in our last game against Rotherham, where we lost 5-1, 5-2. But I looked at him at preseason. I went to some of the preseason games and I saw him playing. And my God, he has got some talent. I think the guy's 17 years old now, like not long turned 17. And he just brings so much different. He's so creative. And the thing I find with youth players as well, they're so undisciplined to the point where they're really unpredictable because they haven't had a manager to beat out all the creativity in them. You know, Cody Twos, who I think played against Southampton, and he had a strike outside the box, which is a very powerful and straight strike, and it almost actually went in as well. And whether the keeper saved it or was narrowly missed. And just that one strike was enough to tell me, okay, you know, there's players who want to play for this first team. They're really hungry, but yet we're not using them till right at the end of the season when it doesn't really matter. And then Troy Perrott, who I never heard of before, but he was featured in one of the matches Errol Bullet had towards the start of the season because we had lack of depth in the midfield. I just thought, like, I never heard of this kid, but he must be somewhat decent if the manager, the first team manager, just randomly put him in there. And I could go again. We already have Luke Pierce, who's featured a lot as well. Manny Barton is the new name for the under-18s, and never heard of him to that point. And then Daniel Ola, who actually follows me on Instagram. I just thought I'd plug that in. But again, people that are scoring goals for fun in the youth team. So I don't understand why we can't be introducing them slowly, you know, be responsible about this, but actually introduce them. And again, it comes to the point of like, they're not ready. And like, that's the whole point. The whole point is that you bring them into your squad when they're not ready. Okay. Because that's where you get the sink or swim, because some players, you just introduce them to your squad and they just gel together. For whatever reason, they just get it and they just hit the ground running and they just start really well. And they're like that for the rest of the time they play for the club. And that's how you increase the value, the market value of these players. And again, I don't want to talk these all in like a financial point of view. But at the end of the day, we're Cardiff City. We're a championship club, mid-table championship club at best at the moment. The best way we're going to progress is to develop our young players and sell them on for profit for bigger clubs. Okay? And this is what we're not doing. It's like, the whole point, when they say they're not ready, it's literally just like saying, oh yeah, I'm going to wait until I'm in shape to start the gym. Well, it's like, no, start the gym now so you can get in shape. That's the whole point, right? So if you just wait forever, like, oh, I'm fat, I'm not going to get in the gym, no. It's like, well, you're missing out on the whole point, okay? So that's kind of how I feel about the they're not ready statement. And we're still going, I'll be a bit quick on this now, but the pros and cons of playing the youth. So I'll start with the cons and I'll compare them with the pros. First of all, is the obvious one, is the inexperienced thing. Oh, they're not experienced. Yeah, but the thing is, when you introduce people who are inexperienced, they're really hungry to prove their point, to prove their worth to the team. And that's so valuable because players will try 200% more than our regular starters because they know they're just going to get in the squad. Joe Rolls knows that if he's fit, he's going to at least be on the bench. Same with Aaron Ramsey, same with El Ghazi, okay? Same with these other players, which I don't want to discredit them, but again, these are not the future of the club, all right? And nothing to say, oh, well, they're raw and undisciplined, you know, they haven't had, you know, time with the manager. Okay, so first of all, a lot of these players are actually training with the first team squad. So that's one thing, just to like get rid of that rumor. And the second thing is that you kind of want the raw and undisciplined nature of a young person, because like I said before, they haven't had that creativity beaten out them through a certain tactic they've been told by a coach. Now, obviously, you need to kind of tame that lion to a certain part, right? But it's easier to tame a lion than it is to try and teach a sheep how to roar. Okay, I know that's a really weird example, but that's the kind of thing. It's like, it's easy. Like my basketball coach used to say this a lot as well. It's easier to sort of like calm the aggression from an aggressive person as opposed to trying to teach someone to be really competitive and to be really sort of like up for the game. It's just much easier the other way around. Another thing is, like I said, they're unpredictable, but they're going to be, right? Because like we don't know about these players until you start playing them, right? So it kind of falls on deaf ears. But the two main sort of things that I can be like, okay, fair enough, is the unknown injury record. So when players are young, they don't have a good history or a big history of like the certain injuries they pick up. But you can kind of just say that, well, we don't have to worry about that until it happens, because you can say, well, they're going to be really energetic anyway because they're so young, and their respiratory system and everything else is going to be probably the best it'll be around age 20. And the other thing which I can kind of understand is the inconsistency. So fans want something that's exciting, that's new. They really enjoy like youth players, and they give them a lot more patience that when they're inconsistent and when they lose the ball, there'll be some ums and ahs and, oh no, like you give away the ball again. But they're not going to properly slate you. I mean, there's always going to be a few that are horrible. But with the inconsistency, again, that improves by introducing them more. And again, I'm not saying to start like 7, 8 youngsters at a time. I'm talking introduce them, put them on the subs bench, let them be on the subs bench for the whole game, watch a whole away experience and understand this is the kind of training we go through. This is what it feels like, the atmosphere. And you could even tell them, look, I'm not going to play you in this game, but I want you to come along just to watch, even as a traveling reserve. Do that more often, because they need to get familiar with this kind of atmosphere of like going on a away day all the way up to Stoke on a rainy night, right? That classics of saying. Take them on that journey and understand that, like, even if you don't play them, they get that kind of experience. Still on youth, because it's massive, but homegrown profit. Like, this is the typical Cardiff example. This is not like, really realistic. This is what we usually do. In about 2 years of a youth sort of academy developing, about 3 out of 7 of the players will be sold for about between 100 to 500k profit each in the next 2 years, right? About 2 out of 7 of those will be rotated in and around the first team or on loan and non-league clubs, so probably not the best for them to grow. And then the other 2 will usually be released as a free agent and developed into a solid League 1, League 2 starter. Excuse me. And I think of Cameron Antwi as the main example of this. Someone who I thought had some decent talent, maybe wasn't quite up to par, but then he got sold or on a free, I think, to Newport County, and now he's loving life there, and he's getting pretty good minutes there as well. But the potential example we could have is that using our squad and playing them more, if we actually play them or introduce them to more games, we can increase their market value that way. So 3 out of 7 can be noticed in the first team, and they can be sold between 500 to 2 mil, right? Because we need to be more stubborn with how much we're selling for. Think of Mark McGuinness, who was only 23, 24. We ended up selling them for about 10 mil with an extra 5 mil as like a promotion bonus if they go to the Premier League. Probably not going to happen now since they're rock bottom, but it was really good that we almost scammed them out that money. And again, it's not about scamming other teams out of money, but every other team does this. Think of Petersburg when we tried to sign Ricky J. Jones. Right, it didn't work. They wanted so much money for him. But this is the stuff we should be doing more. About 1 out of 7 will be noticed by a big club. I'm talking like your Man Cities, your Liverpools, Man United. They might be noticed by the time they turn 19, think like, oh, we need to steal this player and train him ourselves so that he can either be sold for profits in their club or they can play regular first team football. And we've had players like this. Like, again, it was probably going back a long time ago now, but we haven't always had this youth academy that's been really thriving as of recently. And we can make about between 5 to 10 million pounds profit. People say, oh, this is unrealistic. It's not, though, because this is the whole point of the smaller clubs, is to sell the young players for profit or with the hopes of keeping them at the club, right? And getting to the Premier League. And then 3 out of the 7 could be rotated or starting in the first team. That is the ideal thing, right? Because, again, the future are these players, okay? These are the kinds of players. The youth players are the future of the club. So why aren't we playing them more? Okay, so we've kind of moved on from youth now because I played on that for ages. But matchday atmosphere, especially the year I had a season ticket, the year we went up to Premier League and the year of the Premier League season. So those 2 years in a row, I had the season tickets, and it was still new to me, right? But the matchday experience, the atmosphere, the pre-game hype and everything, it was so much more than what it is today. I mean, you look before, again, excuse the low-quality images, but the promotion season, it just had something different, right? It was Warnock's, I think, first or second full season with the club. And it was just when I was getting into football in Cardiff. And it was just so nice to see a club full of leaders that, they raised the atmosphere up when we were like 1-0, 2-0 down. We really got the ball rolling then. And even when we weren't in the Premier League and we weren't looking like we're going up, there was still much more going on that was, the little additives, the little incentives of going to watch Cardiff City football. Whereas now you look at on the right of the screen, it's literally just like crickets, right? You get maybe about 15,000 to 18,000 turn up. They obviously lie about the attendance figures. They add a few thousand on there. No doubt they do that because it just doesn't look even half full some of the times. I think the last time you had a full stadium was the Leeds tribute match for Sol Bamba, which sadly passed away, rest in peace. But it's just things like these, it's like the atmosphere, there's nothing to play for anymore. Think of like all the match day hype and entertainment we used to have. I mean, we had Domino's halftime pizzas, right? Everyone who would buy, not a season ticket, everyone who would buy a ticket to a match, even the season ticket holders, right, would be automatically entered into a Domino's raffle draw. And at halftime, just before, some random person or seat number would be picked from a hat and they would get a free Domino's pizza. And I always just found that that was like such a little thing, a little touch, but it was so nice to have that. Just thinking like, oh, let's go. You never know, we could win it. Obviously, the chances of winning it were so slim, but there was more incentives there. I mean, we had more highlights in the history of Cardiff City back then, when we were in the Premier League before and just other moments. And we had, I remember just before you had like the Welshmen Will Not Yield anthem, we had this video of us of like just a cinematic, which is a song over it called Born Ready by Zayd Wolf. You can see on the right. I just always loved that song because it was a compilation of Cardiff City goals or like, Sol Bamba pumping his fist and Mendes Lang and Kenneth Sahor and like all these, clips of Cardiff players celebrating. And it was like, it just really sort of built up the atmosphere and the music was loud and it led into, the Welshmen Will Not Yield. I'm not sure if that's the actual name for it, but it was that song and it just was so like, I realized what it meant to be a Cardiff City fan. And that was like the hype we don't have that anymore, right? We don't have that pre-match hype video or cinematic anymore, which is really, really sad. Again, other things you could do is just like have like the highlights of like the last game or like, replay the Cardiff City versus Swansea game on the billboards. Like, again, we probably do this sometimes, but it's nowhere near as done as as it could be. And I went to a game, I went to see Middlesbrough versus Cardiff. I went in the away end. I actually have family up in Middlesbrough, so it made sense for me to go to the game because I was visiting them. And the amount of the pre-match hype for Middlesbrough was so much more and so much better. And as it was the first home game that they played of the year, they showed all like the players who had passed and the fans who had passed away. And Sol Bamba was on there, and it was just like, for the whole thing, everyone in the stadium was clapping for everyone who had passed away, all the, the fans of Middlesbrough. I just thought, like, we don't do anything like that, and like, it just, and again, the 125 years anniversary, don't get me started, honestly. There's been nothing, there's no history, there's no anything, no effort to be made in an attempt of like remembering, the 125 years we've been a club. And they even ruined it with the away kit as well, making it such like the worst color gray ever with the worst color green. I just don't get it. Why couldn't we just go to the original colors? So here's my plan. Very quickly, I'm going to go through this. First of all, make it blue, right? If I was in charge, this is what I'd do. I'd make it blue, turn that disgusting red, all blue and white. It's just blue, white, and a little bit yellow here and there. That's what I would do. Second thing is our staff. We really lack in so many departments, especially like the medical staff as well, which I didn't even include. The amount of injuries we have is disgusting. But first of all, we need a football club staff recruiter. So forget everything else. We need someone who knows football, who's going to hire staff that know football. So we need to hire someone who's going to do all the hiring, basically. Because right now, it's Mehmet Dalman speaks to Vincent Tan, and they, say like, oh, we should hire this person. And then Vincent Tan gets to say at the end of the day, and he's 9 times out of 10, he'll say no. Okay, so this is why we need to hire someone who knows football intelligent people. Okay, it doesn't really matter who it is. It could be just someone who has association with the club. I know Sam Allardyce said that he would love to come to Cardiff City to help out as well. But he said for as long as Vincent Tan and the current ownership are there, he said he's not going near the club. So I was surprised he said that publicly, right? But, even Neil Warnock, right? I probably wouldn't have him back, but he helped loads of other clubs like Torquay, and I think it was, maybe Aberdeen, I think it was, that, he helped out a lot on. And this is the kind of stuff that we need. We need other people who know football to help us get football people in. All right. And the second thing we desperately need is a director of football. I mean, you probably heard it time and time again. And I know that Vincent Tan had his hand burned off before, but at this point, he's just like, there is no director of football for as long as Vincent Tan's here. And it'll bite him on the back. And this is why I really think that, this club is going down the pot at the end of the season. I genuinely think we are going to get relegated. It's because Vincent Tan is so stubborn that he won't listen to anyone else who actually has a clue about how to save the club. Okay, he just wants yes men. He just wants people to go like, yes, that's a great idea, Mr. Vincent Tan. And that's it. And the third one is a lead youth scout. Now, this is kind of like, I don't know how to name this, but right now we have this guy, I can't remember his name, someone Bloxham, was Darren Purse, which I think did a really good job. But because of how well our youth system is thriving right now, we need to make sure we have someone, not just a youth coach, but we need like a youth manager who is going to look for other talent, 15, 16-year-olds around Wales and England and maybe even Scotland, okay, if we're pushing it, and just hire the best youth prospects that are 15, 16 years old, okay? And then we need someone to manage over, like, recommending to the first team manager and to the club, say, look, we think that this youth player will be really good if you introduce them in your squad, okay? So things like that, we need those kind of personnel around the club. Now, don't worry, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but another thing is Bluebirds incentives. So if we had something like a Bluebirds loyalty card, like a lot of places have, you have it in Boots, you have it in like Showcase Cinemas, let's just say this, right? Fans of the Bluebirds account automatically get signed up to this digital loyalty card. So you can scan your QR code when you go to games or when you're buying tickets or getting merchandise, right? And for every pound that you spend, you get 1 blue point. Let's just say that currency. And the points reset at the end of every season. But if you get, if you spend £100, which probably is 2 matches if you're getting 2 people to go, then you entered in the halftime Domino's raffle. Let's just say, like, we're bringing that back, okay? Because I love it so much. And then if you were to spend up to 300 points, you can get 10% off club store merch, 15% off Derby Day tickets, and you can read the rest as well. But let's just say, like, you were right at the top, then you get like a meet and greet with 3 players if you spend like a ridiculous amount of money in the club, just to show that there's an incentive there, because some people will spend a lot of money every single season. Think of the season ticket holders, right? They're going to get a big advantage in something like this. And even like a personalized player or manager, message or video saying like, hi, Sam, thanks so much for being a lifelong fan of the Bluebirds. Like, we're really sort of like rooting for you and everyone else. Thanks for your support. Just something like that, right? They do the happy birthday messages and stuff like that. Do more of that. We need more fan interaction. There's no incentive for this, right? And again, the fan interaction goes another level of match day hype. It's like the first thing when people come into the ground, right? They get their beers, they get their food, whatever. If they're early to sit down in, they sit down. There's no one out yet. There's no players warming up. Maybe the goalkeepers have just come out to warm up. On the billboards, I want CCFC history and highlights. I just want the history of Cardiff, and I want some highlights of, like, back in 1990 when we scored these goals, and progressively get more current. And then by the time that the players are warming up and they've just done their first stretches and everything, I want pre-game fan interviews. I want the guy who's like got the microphone to go into the stands, maybe not the Canton end of the way stand, just to keep it, PG, but like go into the family stand, the grandstand, even the Ninian stand, right? And just ask them questions like, oh, what's your predictions for the score today? Or something like that, just to get the incentive of turning up early to the ground. Because guess what, right? Hey, Mr. Vincent Tan, the longer people are inside the stadium, the more money they're probably going to spend, right? So the more money you're going to make. So if you can get fans into the stadium early and have more places for food, drink, merchandise, all the rest, right? And have all these other entertainment things on, people are going to spend more money, and they're not going to feel bad doing it because they understand the concept of, like, I give you money and you give me food, drink, entertainment, whatever. And the third thing would be the Bluebirds pre-game cinematic. Bring back that born ready thing. Just update it so that instead of it being like 2017, 2018 videos and pictures, bring it more current, okay? Have Callum Robertson there, Ollie Tanner, Yusuf Salek, right? And it doesn't matter if these players no longer play for the club in a couple of years' time. You could still use the same kind of video to get that hype going. I just want to finish off by saying as well, and my computer's kind of screaming at me to stop now. Cardiff City, right, is the capital of Wales. Okay, we're a capital city. We should be much bigger than this. Again, very poor quality images. But Cardiff Castle, you have Cardiff Bay, you have the Principality Stadium, you have Cardiff City Stadium. These are big parts of Cardiff, and we're not showing that enough. We're not letting people know when they come to Cardiff City Stadium, this is Cardiff City, right? This should be a big, massive club. This should be a club in the Premier League. And again, I'm going to be biased, but we really should be. We had our moments, but we actually ranked as the number one club for the amount of points accumulated in the championship because we've been there so long. And it makes me wonder sometimes of like, what has it got to take for us to get back to where I think we belong, which is a bottom of the table kind of Premier League side, okay, where we could be up and down. We think of clubs now like Fulham, clubs like Leeds, Bournemouth, Brentford. These are Premier League regular clubs now. Obviously, Leeds are back down, but they're going to go shoot straight back up. These are clubs that have been always up and down from the Championship and the Premier League, but yet they manage now to find some kind of consistency for most of them, to be a regular Premier League team. And if they go down, they're fully confident knowing they can go back up. All right. The one sort of like exception, I guess you could say, for that is Luton Town, where they kind of went up and now they're doing a Sunderland and going all the way back down. But these are things that like it just boggles my mind sometimes. But that is pretty much it. And whether we're in the Premier League or League Two, I'm Cardiff till I dies, as the song goes. So thanks very much for watching.